Looking at inverse cosine function of section 5 of chapter 7. So inverse cosine is also called arc cosine, okay? And that is on a restricted domain, because here is cosine, right? It goes 1, then 0, then -1, then back here, back up, right? So it goes like this. So as we can see, this is not a one-to-one function, right? But if we eliminate this part, then it is one-to-one. So if we restrict that domain from 0 to pi, then we do have a one-to-one function. So then we can do the inverse, right? So then its inverse is a function if it's one-to-one. So that means the inverse y equals sine inverse, or sorry, not sine, cosine inverse, cosine inverse of x, then that would look something like this. Here we have, well, I guess we go more like this, I guess, because my y's become my x's, right? So -1 to 1, and then my x's, 0, pi halves, and pi become my y value. So 0, 0 here, 0 y value, and then I have pi halves, and then I have pi. So I have 1, 0, right? So 1, 0. Then I have pi 0 for my x, and then -1 pi. So it kind of looks like this. It's kind of like that. Okay, so now that's one-to-one. So that is one-to-one. This is 0 for my x here, or 0 for my y and 0 for my x there, but so it looks like that. So we want to find the angle, right? So let's do a couple examples here. We're finding the angle of arc cosine of 1. So we're looking, if we're doing the left-hand method, when we put down a finger, we're looking to the left, right? Left of our left hand. So what finger do I need to put down in order to get a 1 out, right? So we're looking for what angle gives a cosine of 1, right? Cosine of what angle? Cosine of what angle do we get a 1 out? And that is 0 degrees or 1 degrees. Remember, we're between 0 and pi, so that's 180. Right, so those where our answers are going to range. And so basically that's looking at the top half, right? So that's looking up here in the first and second quadrant. And here we go, inverse cosine of root 2 over 2, negative root 2 over 2. So let's just focus on the root 2 over 2. So cosine of what angle, maybe this is a better question, of what angle is root 2 over 2? Well, root 2 over 2 is a 45, right? So that's a 45, but I want a negative, so that means I'm going to have to be in this second quadrant here. So if I just take 180 and I minus 45 from that, I get 135. So I get 135 degrees or 3/4 pi. Okay, so there's the answer to that. So we can go ahead and do these problems, page 684, numbers 15 and 23. So let's go ahead and look at those. So here's number 15. So number 15 is y equals cosine inverse of -1. So here at -1, remember we're looking from 0 to pi, so that means we're looking at the second quadrant and the first quadrant. So we're looking at this one and this one. Here is cosine is basically your x, right? So that's 1 is here, and a -1's over here. So that's at 180 or pi, right? You can still do the left-hand method, that's fine, but we're looking in the first and second quadrant, and we're looking at cosine, which relates to x. And when is my x1? At what angle is my x1? At what angle is my x? X over r, really. So it'd be x over r, but we're looking at the unit circle here, so our r is 1 for now. right? Later, we won't be looking at the unit circle, we're looking at right triangles so that we do have r. But in this case, since -1 is kind of in our unit circle here, we can go ahead and just think about just x plane. So at what angle is my x? -1. And that would be 180 degrees, or pi. Okay, and then number 23. So looking at number 23, they're going to use arc sine, right? Because arc sine means the same thing as inverse cosine. And we have a negative √3/2, so think about just √3/2. So what finger do we put down that lets us 3 on the left hand of our left hand? And that is the second finger, so that is a 30-degree angle. So that's 30 degrees, or pi/6, but we need a negative, so take 180 and subtract 30, right? Subtract 30 from 180, and you would get 150. So 150 degrees, or 5 pi/6 in radians there. Okay, so that's it for cosine. That was a quick one.